Forward to collaborate. Okay. I think we're going to get started. I think I'll lean on my colleague Dan if you want to keep an eye on the waiting room and admit any other folks who are going to be coming in. But we've got a packed agenda here, so I think we're going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started. Again, as I mentioned before, today's webinar will be recorded and shared along with the slides through an email to all who registered. And the contact information for our speakers will also be listed at the end of the deck. We've got a packed agenda planned for you. We'll start with some background on why SNAP outreach in schools is increasingly vital to safeguard child food security. After that, we'll outline what's included in the final SNAP outreach requirement under New York's Universal Meals Program and some broad best practices. Next, we're going to dig into some concrete examples with our guest for today, Lisa Ostrowski, Director of Food and Nutrition Services at North Colonie Central School District. We'll wrap up with action steps and walk you through our top resources for schools, including our statewide SNAP outreach toolkit. We are aiming to wrap this webinar up at 1:30, but can stay on for just a couple extra minutes if folks have questions. We had a ton of questions come in through registration, so that's always good news. And please, in the meantime, drop your questions in chat as they come up, and we'll try to get to those at the end. I hadn't introduced myself, so I'll just quickly say I'm Francesca DiGiorgio with Hunger Solutions New York, and I'm also joined by my colleague Dan, who I'll let him introduce himself to. He's waving hello. And before we dive in, I'll just share some background on Hunger Solutions New York for those we haven't worked with yet. We are a statewide anti-hunger organization based out of Albany, New York, focused on raising awareness of hunger and maximizing the federal nutrition programs. Our team works across these programs to increase participation through statewide outreach and individual technical assistance. We have a long history of SNAP outreach work here in New York, which I will touch on in the next slide. For nearly 4 decades, our organization has led statewide SNAP outreach efforts through the Nutrition Outreach and Education Program, which is abbreviated NOAP. NOAP provides outreach, pre-screenings, and application assistance to help low-income New Yorkers access SNAP and other federal programs. Through a contract with the state, we manage NOAP's network of community-based organizations, which employ more than 80 SNAP navigators or assisters to provide confidential no-cost services to New Yorkers in their respective counties and boroughs. And in addition to NOAP, Hunger Solutions New York also leads targeted SNAP outreach projects and has focused on partnering with schools for nearly a decade. And this work has led to the development of several resources for schools, including our outreach toolkit. And my colleague Dan, who you'll hear from later, provides individualized support to schools with this tool, and he'll walk you through that soon. Oops, realizing that I skipped ahead. Here we are, we're on the right slide now. So why is SNAP outreach in schools a requirement for the Universal Meals Program? The short answer is because strong school meal programs rely on strong SNAP participation. On the one hand, SNAP outreach simplifies how school meal programs run. When more families participate in SNAP, it increases the number of students automatically certified as free eligible for school meals without an application. This is the case even now when school meals are free to all. These families are captured through a data matching process, which translates to less paperwork burden for schools. Meanwhile, SNAP outreach also promotes financial viability. Under New York's Universal Meals Program, the focus has shifted away from individual kid eligibility for free meals. It's now on school eligibility for federal provisions like the Community Eligibility Provision, abbreviated CEP. Most schools on this call are likely operating this provision. I'll take a beat here also to just reiterate that all schools operating the federal meal programs are now under the umbrella of universal meals. So regardless of how schools administer the program through CEP or another provision called Provision 2, the enacted policy includes state funding for all reimbursable meals not covered by federal funds. So the connection to SNAP here is that federal funds cover the cost of school meals served to students participating in SNAP. So when more students come in through SNAP, more federal funding is drawn down by the school meal program. And this offsets the cost for the state to operate universal meals. Simply put, SNAP outreach is required under universal meals because it ensures New York is maximizing federal funding to safeguard the program's longevity. So, as hunger in New York continues to climb, SNAP and other federal assistance programs are essential to help families put food on the table. SNAP is our nation's largest anti hunger program. It lifts families out of poverty, it feeds nearly 850 New York kids, yet many eligible families don't participate. So, at this point, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that historic, sweeping changes to SNAP are underway, some immediate and more longer term. And amid these federal changes, it can feel counterintuitive to promote SNAP. Yet we're seeing this perfect storm of historic inflation at grocery stores, rising food insecurity, and higher demand across our state's emergency feeding network of banks and pantries. I'm sure many of you are seeing this crisis in your own communities, which is why it's critical for schools to mobilize their existing infrastructure to tell families about SNAP. I want to underscore that schools do not need to be experts in SNAP, but you can be the bridge to SNAP support. As trusted community hubs that are already helping low income families, you can direct to available assistance. And this is more important than ever as families are navigating these changes to SNAP. By taking action now with SNAP outreach, you can help build stability. For families, it'll strengthen food security and streamline access to other benefits and services. For schools, it will strengthen operations, especially for those operating CEP, and ensure sustainability for the state's universal free meal program. So, we've talked about why New York's universal meals law requires schools to promote SNAP to families. Now, let's talk about what's included. Under this requirement, schools must use at least one of the following strategies to share information about SNAP with families. Schools can make direct referrals to local SNAP outreach providers that offer eligibility pre-screening, application assistance, and education. Schools can also distribute SNAP education materials during school registration or at other appropriate venues accessible to families. And last but not least, schools can help families learn how to apply, whether that's through your social services department or online. For now, the goal is just to get familiar with this requirement and know that you'll need to do one of these strategies. The New York State Education Department will be putting out guidance for schools on how to implement these strategies. I will add that all the content that we're going to be covering today around best practices and examples do align with what's in the requirement. In the meantime, a big highlight that we already see with this requirement is the flexibility that it leaves for schools to implement at the local level. It's clear that NYSED put a lot of thought into alleviating the burden of SNAP outreach by outlining the requirement in this way. So before we dig into some concrete examples of SNAP outreach with Lisa, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Dan to talk more about some broad best practices and how to get the most impact from your outreach.
Thank you so much, Francesca. I'm really looking forward to the conversation with Lisa, so I'm going to jump right in here. First and foremost, SNAP outreach works best when it's a shared effort across the school community. We want to underscore that how the requirement is written does not designate a specific group or department to carry this work. This means your district can decide the best way to coordinate staff. Consider who in your district is already connected to low-income families. Equip support professionals like school social workers and nurses with outreach resources and referral information. It's also important to highlight SNAP outreach efforts to the rest of the school community. Make sure district administrators, building principals, school nutrition staff, and teachers are looped in. Consider presenting at staff meetings to highlight where SNAP outreach resources are available. Effective SNAP outreach is also publicly available and easy to access for students and families. We recommend schools use high traffic communication channels families are already using to access school information. This could be the district website, parent and school apps, social media, cafeteria menus, or at school events. Regardless of the channel you choose, providing both electronic and printed copies will help ensure the information reaches families. Lisa's going to give you some more specific examples later on, so I don't want to steal her thunder. The frequency and timing of SNAP outreach is also important. We want families to be seeing this information year-round to maximize exposure. But you can be strategic about folding SNAP outreach into other routine communications for back to school, mid-year, end of year, and communications during the summer break. To make direct referrals more effective, start with families who submit school meal applications or household income forms and are both eligible and or near eligible for free meals, as well as those who access school-based support programs, including backpack programs, food pantries, or other similar initiatives. I'll wrap up best practices by highlighting that SNAP outreach works best when it includes information on the benefits of participating and next steps for applying, so families understand how SNAP helps and where to find application assistance. The good news is that we have resources to make this work a lighter lift for schools. We have a new fact sheet outlining the best practices I shared today. This fact sheet is the latest addition to our statewide SNAP outreach toolkit for schools. We will send the best practices fact sheet and slides to all participants. And I'm really excited. Up next, we're excited to have Lisa with us to share some more about her experience with this tool and the strategies working best for her district. I'll hand it back over to Francesca to kick us into our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dan. And I also just a PSA that we also just popped the SNAP Outreach Best Practices Fact Sheet and Toolkit for Schools in chat if you want to get a sneak preview. I am so delighted to introduce Lisa Ostrowski as our guest speaker for today. Lisa oversees the Food and Nutrition Services Department at North Colonie Central School District, which serves over 7,400 students across 15 buildings. And under Lisa's leadership, North Colonie took incremental steps towards offering free meals to all students through CEP and ultimately adopted district-wide in the 23-24 school year following state investments to expand access. And Lisa continues to operate universal free meals through CEP this year and also added additional buildings to her program through Provision 2. So what stands out from North Colonie's journey to universal meals for me is how they initially qualified for district-wide CEP by a slim margin of just 2 students. Lisa has highlighted the role of robust data matching through direct certification process to help boost eligibility for CEP. This data matching process was critical to identifying more low-income students on SNAP. At the same time, North Colonie has also taken proactive steps to expand SNAP outreach over the years, most recently with support from my colleague Dan. And lastly, I'll just highlight that North Colonie also leverages other strategies to complement universal free school meals, such as offering breakfast after the bell and summer meals. We're so glad for another opportunity to spotlight Lisa and the incredible work her district does to strengthen food security in their community. So, to kick things off, let's take it back to the beginning, Lisa. How did you first get involved with SNAP outreach in your district?
So, because we were universal free meals and under CEP back in 23, 24, we kind of got a group of folks together in the district because we would no longer be doing using the income application process as we usually do in food service. So there is a household application that folks were seeing among the district that they wanted to use to make sure that we weren't missing any students that weren't directly certified. So the group consisted of course, food service, our communications, pupil services, our director of data and student engagement. And we started food service actually kind of go to square one and explain the application process and how it would work moving forward. So we had our team together. And we had kind of got that under control, as well as continuing on a monthly basis download directly certified students into our district. Other than that, I think we were contacted last spring or late winter from Dan and Hunger Solutions to kind of tell us about the SNAP toolkit, which we found to be quite interesting and helpful. We thought it would be helpful to our folks. So we already had our group together. So we kind of got back together in the spring and said, so how could we best get information out to our families? And we decided that, well, you know, it was kind of spring and there was a lot going on, but we did at the elementary level just to get things going is we used in the SNAP toolkit, there's a half program or a half info sheet, and we sent that home to all of our elementary schools. And that's how we got started.
So much good stuff there, Lisa. What I was taking away from that is a couple of different things. First of all, just that early communication from that initial meeting that you were telling us about between your department and kind of bringing in other stakeholders at the table really laid the groundwork for when it was time to take some of these outreach strategies to the next step. And also just that this was not squarely on the food service department alone. I mean, I think it's so great that you are a leader in your district and taking this initiative and certainly positioned to do so, having such a frontline connection with families and students coming through the cafeteria line and interfacing with your program. But it certainly doesn't fall on food service department. I think we heard illustrated through your points that it's pupil services, student engagement and data, communications, all coming together. And the other takeaway I think was that, you know, incremental steps. It sounds like you sort of piloted some SNAP outreach with this outreach to the elementary backpack programs, using that flyer, half sheet, and that kind of got the ball rolling as a first step. And then I think the last takeaway was just that having some resources ready to go, like from our SNAP Outreach Toolkit, kind of made it more tangible for your district. So those are just like my top level takeaways. I think we've got a lot to get through. So I think this is a great segue into maybe some of the other SNAP outreach strategies that are working well for North Colony. If you want to kick us off again, Lisa.
Sure. So at the beginning of the school year for this school year, we put it on our website. So all of the families who were looking at what's going on, you know, going to be going on in the district early fall. We also sent it home in newsletter. And again, we did send it out again to the elementary schools to put with their take home packet. So I believe some of those schools not only either put it in their take home packet or they had it visible on a table for their welcome back to school nights as well. So those are some of the things that we have done at this point.
Those are, oh, go ahead, Lisa. I feel like you're about to take a breath.
Yeah, you know, part of this is the best part of it for us is that number one, it takes the onus off, some of it off of food services, but you know, for our families, not only would it be is the CEP great for giving kids nutrition during the school year, but also allows for some feeding in the summer by having being under CEP, we're able to have a couple of summer programs that were no summer programs in our school district prior to us becoming CEP. They are closed sites, but to me that was a win. Certainly, it helps with data collection for state funding and that type of thing. So it helps the district as a whole. As far as, again, going back to families and students beside the nutrition piece, There is the fact that it allows for maybe a reduced uh, for a musical instrument or a free instrument to students who can't afford one, driver's education courses at a discount, AP college courses, testing, reduced fees for testing for college entry. I mean, there's just so many things that are connected to being directly certified and part of the SNAP program that uh, take into consideration for in the school district.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I think it's so important to underscore we cannot underscore enough the benefit of SNAP outreach for schools, but also for students and families. And you touched on a ton of good points. I think I'll highlight kind of my big takeaways here is that SNAP outreach really, in addition to being this critical nutrition support for students and families, it's also streamlining their access to other support services. And I think you highlighted some of those, the discounts on instruments and driver's ed being some of those. So just in a world where families are already jumping through multiple hoops for multiple services, having this streamlined connection through students automatically being eligible due to their SNAP participation is just paramount. And so such a wonderful benefit to highlight. Um, and you also spoke to some of those administrative efficiencies that we see for schools and around the processing of income information, with SNAP students all automatically being captured through data matching that really takes the onus off of the district to have to go and collect that information, spend that time and resources doing so, which is just super, super important. And you also touched on this added capacity then to added capacity and eligibility to qualify to offer other programs to bridge the gap over the summer, just with the summer feeding programs that you were talking about. So just so many good things there. And I think the other piece that I want to touch on here is just going back to some of the strategies that you mentioned, and just some of the things that I really loved about what you were sharing and want to highlight. So on your food services webpage, which we did share in chat, I just wanted to point out a couple of different things that I love about how you've done this. On your food services webpage, there's information presented as a graphic that actually comes from our toolkit that highlights the benefits of SNAP. And I think that that's really important. A lot of families might not be aware. And so that's first and foremost important. But then also there's information directing families to next steps applying, including through our online eligibility pre-screening tool, which Dan will talk with us about in a little while. As well as the link to the SNAP application itself, which is available at My Benefits webpage on the state Office of Temporary Disability and Assistance. And this was actually highlighted as a best practice by Governor Hochul in her most recent State of the State address. So again, can't underscore enough how Lisa's district is really paving the way and just like checking all the boxes of how to do strong, effective SNAP outreach. I also just wanted to really quickly touch on the newsletter that you spoke about. Something that really stood out to me there is that in that newsletter that Lisa has, there's actually a designated food services section. And I don't have like a copy of the newsletter to share in chat, but just like having that designated food services section where there's emergency feeding resources like through pantries, but also the link out to the My Benefits SNAP application is just such a great best practice. I do want to be mindful of time. We are getting close to the half hour mark, so I think that's all we'll have time for today. But maybe to close us off, Lisa, is there anything else that you'd like to share about SNAP outreach at your district? Any ways that you're looking to build the program in future? Anything at all that you want to leave folks with?
Well, I think I agree with this that there's so many regulations upon us, not only in the food service departments of schools, but schools in general, that even with this new regulation, kind of the flexibility, but also the fact that you folks have already prepared everything we need. We just have to figure out the best way to use it in our district and continual use of it as we move forward. I mean, this is like the easiest reg that we've had. I think in my 20 years working in school lunch. So I would like to thank you for that. And also, as we move forward, we're going to continue to try to get it out there in multiple ways, looking at quarterly newsletters, putting in backpack programs more often than not, or making sure it gets into if someone is new to the backpack program in a school, that we don't wait quarterly, but we give that information right away. So again, I want to just thank you for making it easy.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And right back at you, Lisa and her district are just truly paving the way and lifted up so many concrete examples. So we just really appreciate your time and for being with us. I think this is takes us to some action steps that we have for today's presentation. Now is the time to prioritize SNAP outreach. We encourage schools to elevate SNAP throughout the remainder of the year and over the summer. To get started, consider your existing communications and where it makes sense to integrate SNAP information. We heard this was a strategy that Lisa used through like the newsletter and her district website, for example. And so you heard a lot of great strategies from Lisa today that maybe they're not on your district's radar yet. So bring those new strategies back to your district, see what resonates, and take the next step. And even if you aren't in a position to start or expand SNAP outreach in your district personally, in your role or capacity, there are still other ways to get involved. You can still share the benefits of SNAP in your school community. You can highlight the new SNAP outreach requirement with school leaders and bring ready to use resources back to your district. So whatever step you're on, our team can help get you started. And so this is a great segue for my colleague Dan to talk more about our toolkit resources, which he provides individualized support to for schools. I know that we're close to the 1:30 mark and just really appreciate everyone's flexibility. This will be recorded, so if you got to jump, you can always circle back to watch the rest, but I don't want to rush this part, so we're going to go on a couple minutes long. Thanks so much. On to you, Dan.
Thanks so much, Francesca and Lisa. Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and I can't wait to see sort of where you take this and help support your efforts. But as you've heard, the new SNAP outreach rule under universal free meals is intentionally flexible. Schools are not required to do everything. They're required to do at least one of three things. What we've set out to do at Hunger Solutions New York is design a toolkit that lets districts choose the option or combination of options that works best for their capacity. Districts can review the rule and ask, what's the best place for us to start? And then you can use Hunger Solutions New York's SNAP Outreach Toolkit to execute that decision. One resource I wanna call out, and Lisa, thank you for bringing it up earlier, is the half-page SNAP outreach flyer in the toolkit because it actually touches on all three outreach strategies laid out in the rule. First, it provides SNAP education in clear, family-friendly language. Second, it directs families to our SNAP pre-screening tool, which connects them to free confidential application assistance, including the information to access their local NOEP providers. Thirdly, it clearly shows families where and how to apply for SNAP through mybenefits.my.gov and how to connect with their local social services department from there. So for districts looking for a single low-lift resource, that flyer alone can satisfy the outreach requirement while also helping families take real next steps. It is up to schools to decide how and how often to distribute that flyer. And as Francesca mentioned, I am here to help you with that. Of course, we encourage districts to take a comprehensive approach to SNAP outreach using all of the resources that are available to them. But we know many districts start with one manageable outreach step and build from there. Whenever you're ready to start or expand, I'm here to support you. Beyond the flyer, the toolkit includes additional ready-to-use resources that districts can plug into their existing communication channels. This includes sample newsletter and website language, short blurbs for registration materials, social media graphics and posts, and guidance on how to connect families to their local SNAP application assistance. The idea is to meet districts where they are and provide options that align with how you already communicate with families without creating extra work. In short, the SNAP Outreach Toolkit gives districts a ready-to-use way to meet the new rule by choosing the outreach approach that fits their capacity without having to build something from scratch. Before I wrap up, I do want to briefly discuss our SNAP pre-screening tool, which is embedded throughout the toolkit and is an incredibly valuable resource for students, families, and community partners. The tool helps families quickly understand whether they may be potentially eligible for SNAP and connects them to free confidential application assistance. This makes the work easier for schools because you don't need to be a SNAP expert to use the tool effectively. The pre-screening tool can be shared with students, families, or utilized by direct service providers as a simple first step to help decide whether applying for SNAP makes sense and connects families who want to apply for SNAP to support once they choose to move forward. We're always happy to help walk through the toolkit and the best practices document one-on-one and help districts decide which options make the most sense for them. It would honestly be my absolute pleasure to set up a time to speak with anyone who is interested in reviewing the toolkit and best practices for SNAP outreach. My contact information is later on the slides, and I'll drop it in the chat now. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I would love to meet with you and support your SNAP outreach efforts. No question is too small, no effort too large. Reach out to me. Let's set up a time to talk. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate those who've been able to sort of stay a little longer. I'm going to pass it over to Francesca to bring us on home.
Thanks, Dan. On that note, as Dan mentioned, please see our team's contact information listed on the slide here and do consider us a resource. Lisa has also kindly offered to share her contact information. Our website is here, and we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter for updates. Certainly, once we see that guidance coming out from NYSED, we will amplify to our networks. So you will hear that from us. That wraps up the content for today's presentation. We just so appreciate your time staying on a little extra with us today and just for what you all do for students and families. It is not an easy job. So if others have questions, we can stay on a couple extra minutes to see what else came in through chat. And I have a couple of questions that also came in through registration that I can address in the meantime, maybe as we're waiting to see if other questions come through. One question that I'll highlight that came in through registration, and I can pop this in the chat. I love this question, is how can staff at local public libraries contribute to and support the public schools as it relates to SNAP outreach? And truly, libraries and other community hubs serving low-income families are such powerful voices in support of SNAP. And the best practices and resources that we shared today are absolutely transferable for libraries to use. So I would encourage you, if you're at a public library here in New York and you want to help plug the SNAP outreach information that we have in our toolkit into places where families are already looking for information from the library, whether that's a community bulletin, a library newsletter, events, webpage that might have community resources on. I'll also add that some libraries serve as sites for summer meals, and so that can certainly be low-hanging fruit for SNAP outreach during the summer months, whether you're a library or another community organization or a school. And I'll just highlight a recent blog, my colleague Cody Bloomfield, who leads our summer nutrition work, and she interfaces a lot with libraries, and that can give you a little bit more information there on libraries as partners. Let's see, just keeping
I'll
an
also,
eye
while
on chat.
you're looking for that, Francesca, I'll just
Yeah.
mention that my support's not limited to schools. So I just want to be
Yes.
clear that if you're a library, if you're a community partner, sort of anywhere that's interested in doing SNAP outreach, you also are welcome to reach out to me. We can run through the toolkit together and sort of see what fits best.
I'll pop another question here in chat that we got through registration, asking just if there are any SNAP outreach requirements for CEP districts. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm happy to reiterate again, just to make it clear that CEP districts do fall under the umbrella of the Universal Meals Program. So they do need to fulfill each of the requirements to participate, including SNAP outreach. And we did share a memo from NICED a little bit earlier on in the webinar that kind of outlined those requirements for universal meals for you. Looking here at some other questions that came through. Let's see. Another one that we got. We are already participating in the CEP program for schools. Can SNAP outreach help us further? So the short answer is absolutely. You heard some great benefits from Lisa today, and just to summarize again, SNAP outreach is truly a best practice to strengthen and sustain your operations as a CEP school. So what that means is that even though we have universal meals, you have to still recertify for CEP every 5 years. But you can recertify at any time, importantly. So keeping an eye on your direct certification numbers, that data matching process, capturing kids who are free eligible, large proportion of which is through SNAP. So keeping an eye on that from year to year, which you have to do regardless, is going to help monitor any changes. And if you do see changes to your direct certification numbers, then it would likely benefit you to consider recertifying sooner in your cycle. And SNAP Outreach can help you recertify at a stronger percentage. Let's see. Okay, one other question here. Should SNAP applications be available on the school website, similar to how the free school lunch application is available on the school website? So for this specific question or strategy, I would really lean on the NICED guidance that you're going to have coming out soon around specific, that's going to provide specifics on implementation of those kind of 3 core strategies that we outlined under the requirement. What I'll add is that certainly plugging the snaphelpnewyork.org website for the pre-screening tool on your webpage can be a nice prompt to connect families to next steps for applying, since it'll connect them with outreach, application assistance, and also refer them to the application at My Benefits. I do want to be mindful of time. I'm not seeing other questions come in through chat. So I think,
Let me
are
just
you
add,
seeing?
in
Oh,
addition
please,
to
Dan, go
that
ahead.
last question, Francesca, is that I know we mentioned it, but we do have ready to use excuse me, language for websites. And so if you're like looking to do that, which I think is an excellent strategy, and well, you can connect with us or look at the toolkit for that language. And so you can just sort of be assured it's sort of consistent in a good way to sort of access the SNAP information.
That is a great point, Dan. Thank you so much for jumping in. Again, I just wanted to wrap up this webinar by thanking Lisa so much for her time and for coming here to share her experience with SNAP outreach in her district. Thank you so much, Lisa. And again, to everyone for coming out on the call. I think we're going to wrap it here. And again, this recording and today's slides, along with all the resources that we included in chat, will be shared with everyone who registered in a follow-up email. So thank you again, and I think we'll close it here. Have a great day, everyone.